I came home 17 days early to surprise Emily Carter. I expected her to scream when she saw me, maybe cry, maybe hit my chest with both hands and call me an idiot for not warning her. If I was lucky, she would hug me the way she used to when we were teenagers, with her face pressed against my shoulder and one hand gripping the back of my shirt like she was afraid I might disappear again. But Emily wasn't standing behind her flower shop counter when I arrived. She wasn't waiting on my porch. She wasn't in the driveway of the little blue house where she had lived since we were 8 years old. Instead, I found a note taped to my front door. One sheet of cream-colored paper, folded once. My name written across it in her handwriting. Connor. Not Connor Hayes. Not idiot. Not you better call me when you see this. Just Connor. For some reason, that scared me before I even opened it. I stood there in the morning sunlight with my duffel bag still hanging from my shoulder, a cardboard cup of gas station coffee in one hand, and a box of blueberry muffins in the other because Emily once told me love was mostly remembering what someone liked when they weren't around to remind you. I had remembered. I had driven 14 hours to prove I had remembered. Then I opened the note. Connor, I waited as long as I could. I kept telling myself you would come back and say what you were too afraid to say before you left. But I can't keep building my life around a maybe. By the time you read this, I'll be gone. Please don't hate me for finally choosing myself. Emily. For a few seconds, I couldn't hear anything. Not the birds. Not the traffic at the end of the street. Not Mrs. Dawson's wind chimes across the hall. Just one sentence repeating in my head. By the time you read this, I'll be gone. My name is Connor Hayes. I was 30 years old that morning, tired enough to feel the highway still moving under my feet, and stupid enough to believe that coming home early would fix the silence I had helped create for years. Emily Carter was my childhood friend. That was the safe version. The version we told neighbors, relatives, waitresses, real estate agents, and one very confused dentist who once asked if we wanted the same appointment time because married couples usually liked getting things done together. We always laughed. We always corrected people. We're just friends. After 15 years, even I stopped believing us. Emily lived 3 houses away from me growing up. She was the girl who climbed my fence at 9 years old because she wanted to rescue a bird that had flown into our garage. She was the girl who brought soup to my house after my father died and sat beside me on the kitchen floor because I refused to sit at the table without him. She was the woman who opened a tiny flower shop called Flower and Vine and placed a bucket outside every morning with a sign that said, "Take one if you're having a hard day." People tried to pay. She never let them. That was Emily. Soft in ways the world didn't deserve. Stubborn in ways that made you want to argue and kiss her at the same time. And for the last 11 months, I had been in Denver managing construction photography for a company that paid well enough to make cowardice look like ambition. I told everyone it was a good opportunity. It was. I also told myself distance would clear my head. Didn't. Distance only gave my feelings more room to echo. Every Sunday evening, Emily called. Every Sunday I answered. She showed me new flower arrangements. I showed her half-finished buildings and mountain sunsets. She asked if I was eating properly. I lied. I asked if she was dating anyone. She lied too. No one worth mentioning, she'd say. And I would laugh like that answer didn't feel like mercy. Three weeks before my contract ended, the project finished early. My manager offered me another extension. Better pay. Better housing. Another 6 months. I almost said yes because that was what I did when life became too honest. I stayed busy. I stayed useful. I stayed far enough away from the truth that nobody could ask why my voice changed whenever Emily said my name. Then she missed our Sunday call. Emily never missed Sunday calls. She texted 2 hours later. Sorry. Long day. Talk soon. No heart. No joke. No picture of flowers. Just that. Something in my chest went cold. The next morning, I packed my truck. I didn't tell her. I wanted the moment to be real. No warning. No time for either of us to hide. I imagined walking into Flower and Vine. I imagined her looking up from a bouquet. I imagined saying the words I should have said before I ever left. Emily, I came back because I love you. But when I reached my apartment, she had already said goodbye in ink. Behind me, a door opened. Mrs. Dawson stepped into the hall holding a watering can and wearing the same purple robe she had worn every morning since 2009. She looked at me, then at the note. Her face changed. "Oh, Connor," she whispered. My hand tightened around the paper. When did she leave this? Mrs. Dawson didn't answer right away. That was how I knew the truth would hurt. Finally, she said, "Yesterday evening." I swallowed. "Where is she?" Mrs. Dawson looked toward the stairwell. "Flower and Vine. But only until noon." "Why only until noon?" Her eyes softened. "Because her train leaves at 1. I don't remember driving to Flower and Vine. Later, I remembered traffic lights, a red pickup that cut me off, someone honking because I sat through a green light. But I couldn't remember any of it in order. All I could think about was one sentence. By the time you read this, I'll be gone. Flower and Vine stood exactly where it always had, on the corner of Maple and 7th. The white brick walls, the green awning, the wooden buckets overflowing with fresh flowers. Everything looked exactly the same, except somehow, didn't. A small chalkboard stood outside the entrance. Today's message read, "Take one if someone you love needs a reason to smile." My chest tightened. That was Emily. She never believed flowers solved problems. She believed they reminded people they weren't facing them alone. I pushed open the door. The little brass bell rang overhead. The familiar scent hit me immediately. Fresh roses, lavender, eucalyptus, sunflowers. For almost 15 years, that smell had meant Emily. She stood behind the counter with her back to me, wrapping white peonies in brown paper. Her hair was tied into a loose braid. A green apron covered her light blue sweater. There was a streak of pink ribbon curled around her wrist. For a second, I just watched her. She looked exactly the same, and completely different. Maybe that was what 11 months did. "I'm sorry," she said without turning around. "We're only doing pickup orders today. I'll be closing early." "I know." Her hands froze. The ribbons slipped from her fingers. Slowly, she turned. When she saw me, every bit of color disappeared from her face. "Connor." I smiled, though it didn't feel like one. "Hi, Em." She didn't move. Neither did I. For a long moment, the only sound inside the shop was the refrigerator humming behind the counter. "You came home." "I did. You weren't supposed to be back for another 17 days. I finished early. You didn't tell me. I wanted to surprise you." A sad smile touched her lips. "I guess. We both had plans." Neither of us laughed. Her eyes drifted to the folded note still clutched in my hand. "You read it." "I did. I'm sorry. Don't apologize." "I have to." "You don't." Emily looked down at the floor. "I wrote that letter 6 times. What? The first 5 ended up in the trash. I couldn't figure out how to say goodbye to someone who never actually asked me to stay." The words settled between us. Heavy, honest, painfully overdue. I looked at her. "I never wanted you to say goodbye." She let out a quiet laugh. "Connor, you never wanted me to leave. But you never gave me a reason to stay either." I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. Because for the second time that morning, she was right. Emily walked around the counter until only a few feet separated us. I kept waiting for the right time. She smiled sadly. "Your contract would end. You'd come home. We'd finally talk. But every Sunday, you sounded like your new life made you happy." She folded her arms tightly. So eventually I asked myself one question. "What question?" She looked straight into my eyes. "If he can build a future somewhere else, why am I still building mine around him?" I didn't answer immediately. Not because I disagreed. Because I couldn't. She had just described the last 11 months better than I ever could. "I wasn't building a future without you," I said quietly. Emily looked at me with tired eyes. "It looked that way." "I know. I took every extra project. I stayed longer than I had to. I kept saying yes." She nodded once. "I saw. I thought I was doing the responsible thing." "For who?" my career, and for us. A faint, almost painful smile crossed her face. There was never an U.S. Connor. The sentence hit harder than the letter. There was for me. She searched my face. For how long? I laughed under my breath. Without humor. I honestly don't know. I remember being 22 and getting jealous because some guy asked for your number while we were buying groceries. Emily blinked. You remember that? He worked at the bakery. He wore that ridiculous bow tie. She couldn't help smiling. You hated him. He touched your shoulder. You noticed. I notice everything about you. Silence. Real silence. The kind that only exists between two people who have stopped pretending. Emily looked down at the ribbon still wrapped around her fingers. You never said anything. I was scared. So was I. You? She laughed softly. You think it was easy watching every woman flirt with you? I hated every wedding where someone asked if you were single. I hated every time you introduced me as your oldest friend. I hated every goodbye. She took a slow breath. But the airport. Her voice became quieter. I really thought you'd stop me. I frowned. What? The morning you left. I kept waiting. For what? She looked at me. For you to get out of the car. For you to say, don't let me go like this. My chest tightened. I almost did. What stopped you? I thought. If you didn't feel the same, I'd ruin the best thing I'd ever had. Emily smiled sadly. So instead, we both spent almost a year protecting a friendship that neither of us actually wanted anymore. The bell above the door rang. A woman stepped inside holding a little girl's hand. Emily immediately wiped the corners of her eyes. Her smile returned. Professional. Warm. Good morning, she said. Picking up the sunflower arrangement? Yes. It'll just take a minute. I stepped aside while Emily wrapped the bouquet. She knelt in front of the little girl. I added one extra sunflower. The little girl's eyes lit up. Really? Emily nodded. Because your mom told me it's your birthday. The little girl hugged the bouquet. Thank you. Emily smiled. My favorite customers deserve birthday flowers. The woman thanked her, paid, and left. The bell rang again. The shop became quiet. Emily looked around slowly. That was my last order. She untied her apron, folded it carefully, placed it beneath the register. Then she looked back at me. I should lock up. I glanced at the clock. 12:18. 42 minutes. That was all the time we had before she walked out of my life. Maybe forever. Emily walked to the front door and flipped the sign. Open. Became. Closed. She locked it without looking at me. Then she stood there with one hand still resting on the glass. I've imagined this conversation so many times, she said quietly. So did I. She smiled. I don't think either of us imagined it like this. No. She turned around. So tell me. What? Why did you really come home early? I already told you. You said the project ended early. It did. That's not what I asked. She knew me too well. She always had. I let out a slow breath. My boss offered me another contract. Her expression didn't change. For how long? 6 months. And I turned it down. She blinked. You what? I packed my truck the same afternoon. Connor. I couldn't stay. Why? I looked at her. Because after 11 months, I was tired of pretending the only thing I missed was Chicago. I came back because of you. She held my gaze. For me, every Sunday after we hung up, I'd sit in my apartment for another hour. Doing what? Looking at my phone. Hoping you'd call back. Her eyes softened. I thought I was the only one. You weren't. I laughed quietly. I kept taking pictures of buildings, old churches, bridges, mountain cabins. But every time I found a place I loved, my first thought was always the same. I wish Emily could see this. The shop fell silent again. She looked away. Connor. I don't know if that's enough anymore. I know. I mean it. I know. She folded her arms tightly. I spent almost a year teaching myself how to stop loving you. Those words hurt more than anything she'd said all morning. I'd wake up, reach for my phone, then remember you were hundreds of miles away. So I stopped. I deleted our chat from the top of my messages. I stopped checking the weather in Denver. I stopped wondering whether you remembered to eat breakfast. She smiled sadly. I was finally getting better. My chest tightened. And then, you came home. I know. She looked straight into my eyes. You don't get to disappear for 11 months. Walk back into my flower shop and expect everything to become simple. I'm not asking for simple. What are you asking for? I didn't answer immediately, because for the first time since I'd walked through that door, I knew exactly what I wanted. I'm asking for one chance to stop running. Emily stared at me, searching my face, trying to decide whether she believed me. Then, for the first time that morning, she took one small step toward me. She stopped close enough that I could see the tiny freckles across the bridge of her nose. I'd forgotten how impossible it was to look at Emily without noticing every little detail. You always know what to say, she whispered. I just wish you'd learned to say it sooner. I know. No. She shook her head gently. I don't think you do. She looked toward the front window where the afternoon sun spilled across the wooden floor. Do you know how many times I unlocked my phone just to see if you texted? I stayed silent. Do you know how many birthdays, holidays, Sunday evenings? I convinced myself that maybe this would be the day you finally said something. Every question landed heavier than the last. I was a coward. You were. I thought leaving would protect us. Emily smiled sadly. It only protected you. That one sentence hurt because it was true. I don't expect you to forgive me today. I'm not asking you to forget the last 11 months. I'm not even asking you to stay. She looked back at me. No, I shook my head. You got that job because you're talented. You built this shop by yourself. You deserve every opportunity that comes your way. Her eyes searched mine. Then why are you here? I laughed quietly. Because if I let you leave without telling you the truth, I'd spend the rest of my life wondering what would have happened if I'd been brave for once. Emily didn't interrupt. I love you. The words came out calmer than I expected. No dramatic speech. No rehearsed confession. Just the truth. I've loved you longer than I've been willing to admit. I loved you before Colorado. I loved you while I was there. I loved you every Sunday after we hung up. I loved you every time I saw something beautiful and wished you were standing beside me. A tear rolled slowly down Emily's cheek. She didn't wipe it away. I don't want you to give up Portland. I don't want you to choose me because you feel guilty. I don't want another promise made out of fear. I stepped one pace closer. I just needed you to know that if you get on that train today, the woman leaving won't be my childhood friend. She'll be the woman I love. Emily closed her eyes. For several long seconds, she said nothing. When she finally looked at me again, her voice was barely above a whisper. You have no idea how long I've waited to hear you say that. Then she smiled through her tears. And that's exactly what scares me. She reached into the pocket of her apron, pulled out a train ticket, looked at it, then looked. The shop fell completely silent. Neither of us knew what happened next. And for the first time, neither of us wanted to pretend we did. Emily looked down at the ticket again. Then she folded it once, carefully, like even now she couldn't bring herself to wrinkle it. I imagined this moment so many times, she said. I always thought if you ever told me, I'd know exactly what to do. And now, she laughed quietly. Now I have no idea. I smiled sadly. Neither do I. For the first time that morning, we were finally being honest. Emily walked toward the front window. People passed by carrying coffee cups. A father held his little daughter's hand as they stopped to admire the flowers outside. She smiled at them instinctively, then looked back at me. Do you remember the oak tree behind Lincoln Elementary? I blinked. The one we climbed? She nodded. You were 11. You slipped. I broke my arm. She smiled. No. You broke your pride. I broke my arm trying to catch you. I laughed despite everything. You still bring that up. Because that was the first time I realized something. What? You've always tried to protect everyone. Even when nobody asked you to. Her smile faded. But sometimes, protecting people means you never let them choose. The words settled deep inside me. I never gave you that choice. No. You decided what was best for both of us. You left. You stayed quiet. You came back. I never got to decide whether loving you was worth the risk. I slowly nodded. You're right. I know. She didn't say it with satisfaction. Only sadness. I kept waiting for one conversation. Just one. Instead, we lost almost a year. I stepped closer until only inches separated us. I can't change that. No. She stared into my eyes for a long moment. Then, very gently, she reached for my hand. Not to hold it, just to touch it. Her fingertips rested against mine. Warm. Familiar. I missed this, she whispered. My throat tightened. So did I. She smiled through another tear. You know what's funny? What? I spent months trying to imagine this conversation. I thought there'd be some perfect speech. Some movie moment. She looked around the quiet flower shop. But instead, it's just us. I squeezed her fingers. I think that's better. A small laugh escaped her. It probably is. The clock above the register clicked. 12:31. Emily looked at it. Then back at me. My suitcase is in the storage room. I nodded. I know. If I leave now, I'll make my train. I know. If I don't, I'll lose the ticket. I know. She searched my face. Aren't you going to ask me to stay? I took a slow breath. Every part of me wanted to say yes. To tell her not to leave. To forget Portland. To forget the contract. To stay here. With me. Instead, I looked into her eyes and quietly said, No. Emily frowned. No. I won't ask you to give up your dream. She stared at me in complete silence. I already spent 11 months asking you to wait for mine. I'm not going to make you do that again. For a second, neither of us moved. Then something changed in Emily's expression. The hurt disappeared. The fear softened. And for the very first time since I'd walked into Flower and Vine, she smiled the same way she used to. Neither of us spoke. The silence felt different now. Not heavy. Not awkward. Just honest. Emily looked at the train ticket one last time. Then she placed it on the counter. I hate that this is happening today, she admitted. The same day you came home. I know. She smiled faintly. If you had come back yesterday, I probably would have kissed you. I blinked. You would have what? She laughed softly. I almost drove to your apartment last night. You did. Mrs. Dawson told me. Emily nodded. I stood outside your door for almost 20 minutes. I kept telling myself, he's coming home soon. Just wait a little longer. She looked down. Then I realized I'd been saying that for almost a year. My chest tightened. I was so close to knocking. What stopped you? She looked at me. I was afraid you'd open the door one day and tell me you'd met someone else. The thought made my stomach turn. There was never anyone else. I know that now. She smiled sadly. But I didn't know it yesterday. I stepped closer. Emily. She slowly shook her head. Don't. Not yet. She picked up the ticket again. Turned it over in her fingers. You know what scares me the most? What? That if I stay, I'll always wonder what would have happened if I'd gone. And if I go, I'll always wonder what would have happened if I'd stayed. I nodded. I've been thinking the same thing. She looked surprised. You have. I almost accepted another 6-month contract. Her eyes widened. What? My boss offered it to me. And I almost signed. She stared at me. What changed? I smiled. You missed our Sunday call. Emily frowned. That's all it took? It wasn't just the call. It was realizing that the first person I wanted to tell about every good thing in my life was still you. Her eyes began to fill again. I kept pretending work was enough. It wasn't. I kept pretending distance would make me forget. It only made me miss you more. Emily looked away for a moment, then quietly asked, "So why didn't you tell me?" I laughed once, because the answer sounded ridiculous now. "I thought if you didn't love me, I'd lose the most important person in my life." She shook her head slowly. "We're unbelievable. I know. We wasted almost a year. I know." She smiled through her tears. "You know what's even worse?" "What?" "I loved you before you ever left." Those words stole every thought from my mind. "I think," she continued softly, "I loved you before either of us knew what love actually was." I swallowed. "I remember being 16. You fell asleep on the hammock in your backyard. I sat there for almost an hour, because I didn't want to wake you." She laughed quietly. "I remember." "You do." "I wasn't asleep." I stared at her. "You weren't." She smiled. "I just wanted to know how long you'd stay." I couldn't help laughing. "You really are impossible." "And yet," she took one small step closer, "you still came home." The distance between us disappeared. She was close enough that I could smell lavender and fresh roses. Close enough that all the words we'd been carrying for years suddenly felt unnecessary. She looked into my eyes. "So what happens now, Connor?" I looked at her for a long moment. Long enough to realize this was the first time in years neither of us was hiding behind a joke. "I don't know," I admitted. "I've planned this conversation 100 different ways. I had speeches. I had perfect timing. I even practiced saying your name without sounding terrified." Emily smiled softly. "And I forgot all of it the moment I saw your note." She laughed quietly. "So I think we have to." She looked down at the ticket still resting in her hand. "I leave in 23 minutes. I know. If I miss this train, there isn't another one until tomorrow." "I know." She searched my face. "Say it." "What?" "The thing you drove 14 hours to tell me." I stepped closer until only a breath separated us. "I love you. I don't love the idea of you. I don't love you because you're familiar. I love you because every important memory I have somehow ends with you standing beside me. I love you because every city I visited felt unfinished without you. I love you because somewhere between school buses, Sunday phone calls, and stolen French fries, you became the person I measure every day against." Emily's eyes shimmered. "You always say the beautiful things too late." "I know, but they're still true." A tear slipped down her cheek. This time she didn't hide it. "I love you too." She whispered it so quietly I almost thought I'd imagined it. "I've loved you for years. I just got tired of loving you alone." The words broke something inside me. I reached for her hand, slowly, giving her every chance to pull away. She didn't. Her fingers slipped between mine as naturally as if they'd been waiting there all along. "I don't want to lose you again," I said. Emily looked at our hands. "Then don't." "I mean it. If I go to Portland, don't disappear into work. Don't convince yourself you're protecting me. Call me. Visit me. Argue with me. Choose me. Every time." I nodded without hesitation. "I will." She smiled. "I believe you." That surprised me. "You do." "I do." "What changed?" Emily looked into my eyes for a long moment. "You came back." Not when it was convenient. Not after another contract. You came back because you finally stopped running. I let out a slow breath. "I should have done it a year ago." "You should have." She smiled sadly. "But you're here now." The clock above the register clicked again. 12:39. Emily glanced toward the back room where her suitcase waited. Then back at me. "My train." "I know." She laughed softly. "You keep saying that. Because I do. She stepped even closer. So tell me something you don't know. I smiled. I don't know how we're going to make this work. I don't either. I don't know how many flights I'll have to take. I don't either. I don't know how hard it's going to be. Emily nodded. But, I squeezed her hand. But I know I'm done letting fear make decisions for me. For the first time that day, Emily's smile reached her eyes. It was the same smile I'd spent 11 months trying to convince myself I could live without. Couldn't. And finally, I stopped pretending I could. Emily looked at our joined hands. Then very gently she let go. Not because she wanted to, because she needed one more answer. Connor, if I get on that train today, what happens tomorrow? I smiled faintly. Tomorrow I wake up. I go home. I unpack a truck that still smells like 14 hours of bad coffee. And then I buy a plane ticket. She frowned. To Portland. To Portland. You'd really do that? I crossed half the country without telling you. I'm pretty sure I can survive a 2-hour flight. A small laugh escaped her. You make everything sound easy. No. I make it sound worth it. She looked away before quietly asking, what if this doesn't work? There it was. The question both of us had been avoiding. I thought about it for a moment, then answered honestly. I don't know. What if long distance is too hard? I don't know. What if one of us gets scared again? I don't know. What if we fail? I smiled. Then at least we'll fail because we tried. Not because we were afraid. Emily stared at me. For a long time. Then she whispered, I've wanted to hear that for years. She walked to the back room and disappeared for a moment. I heard wheels rolling across the wooden floor. When she came back, she was pulling a navy blue suitcase behind her. Suddenly became real. She really was leaving. She rested one hand on the suitcase handle. I have to go. I know. You keep saying that. Because pretending otherwise won't stop the clock. She nodded slowly. I wish we had another day. I wish we had another year. Emily smiled sadly. We already had one. We just wasted it. Neither of us looked away. Finally she stepped closer. So, are you going to hug me goodbye? I shook my head. No. Her eyebrows lifted. No. If I hug you, it'll feel like goodbye. And I refuse to let this be goodbye. She looked at me with tears shining in her eyes. Then she smiled. You finally learned. What? The difference between letting someone go and giving them a reason to come back. I didn't answer. I simply opened my arms. Emily dropped the suitcase handle, crossed the last step between us, and wrapped both arms around my neck. I held her like I'd been trying to remember how for 11 months. She buried her face against my shoulder. I missed you, she whispered. I closed my eyes. I know. No. She squeezed me tighter. I don't think you do. I missed ordinary things. Making coffee while you complained it was too strong. Stealing fries off your plate. Watching movies neither of us actually liked. My chest tightened. I missed those too. She laughed softly against my shoulder. You even missed me stealing your fries? I would have let you take the whole plate. She pulled back just enough to look at me. That's how I know you're serious. I smiled. I'm very serious. She studied my face for another second, then rose onto her toes. This time, the kiss wasn't unexpected. There was no panic, no confusion, no years of pretending. Just two people who had finally stopped lying to themselves. It was quiet, gentle, certain. When she pulled away, she rested her forehead against mine. Don't make me regret believing you. I won't. I'll be waiting. She smiled. No. She shook her head. Not waiting. She took my hand one last time. I'll be living. You just need to catch up. Emily picked up her suitcase. For a second, neither of us moved. Then she smiled. So, are you driving me to the station? I looked at the clock. 12:47. We should leave. She nodded. I already turned off the refrigerator. I cleaned the coffee machine. I watered the plants. I laughed quietly. You prepared for this. I've been preparing for weeks. That sentence hurt. Not because she was leaving, because she'd prepared herself to leave without me. I grabbed the suitcase before she could protest. I've got it. You've always carried the heavy things. I know. You never let me help. I smiled. I'm learning. She looked at me for a second. Good. Outside, the afternoon sun felt warmer than it had that morning. We locked the flower shop together. Emily slipped the key into her purse, then turned toward the little wooden buckets standing outside the entrance. There were still flowers inside. She pulled one white daisy from the nearest bucket. Here. She held it out to me. For me. She nodded. You've never taken one. I didn't think I was supposed to. She gently tucked the flower into the pocket of my jacket. I think today qualifies. I looked down at the little daisy, then back at her. I'll keep it. I know you will. We started walking toward my truck. Halfway there, Emily stopped. What? I forgot something. What? She looked back at the flower shop. My notebook. The one where I sketch bouquet ideas. I'll grab it. She shook her head. No. We'll be late. It's only a notebook. I studied her face. No. It isn't. She sighed. You know me too well. I'm trying to. I'll be right back. Before she could argue, I ran across the street and unlocked the shop. The notebook lay exactly where she'd left it. Small. Dark green. The edges worn from years of carrying it everywhere. As I picked it up, a folded photograph slipped onto the floor. I bent down. It was old, faded at the corners. Two teenagers, covered in dirt after trying to plant a tree that had leaned sideways before finally falling over. Emily was laughing. I was pretending to look annoyed. On the back, in blue ink, she'd written years ago, "One day we'll stop being afraid of the obvious." I stared at the sentence. She'd written that long before Colorado. Long before either of us admitted anything. I smiled to myself. You really were waiting for me. I carefully tucked the photo back inside the notebook and walked outside. Emily looked worried. I thought you got lost. I held out the notebook. You forgot something important. She took it. When she realized the photograph had fallen out, her cheeks turned pink. You saw it. I did. She looked down, embarrassed. I wrote that when I was 20. I know. I was dramatic. I smiled. No. You were just ahead of me. She laughed. The kind of laugh I'd spent 11 months missing. Then she reached for my hand. Come on. My train isn't going to wait forever. No. I smiled. But I don't think we have to be afraid of forever anymore. The drive to the station took 12 minutes. Neither of us turned on the radio. We talked instead. Not about Portland. Not about long distance. About ordinary things. The old ice cream shop that had finally closed. Mrs. Dawson's cat that somehow kept sneaking into Emily's flower shop. The bakery that still burned their cinnamon rolls every Tuesday. Felt strangely comforting. Like we were finally learning how to be honest without making every sentence about fear. When we pulled into the station parking lot, the platform was already busy. People hugged. People hurried. People cried. For the first time that day, we looked exactly like everyone else. Two people trying to make goodbye hurt a little less. Emily reached for the handle of her suitcase. I stopped her. I've got it. She smiled. I know. We walked onto the platform together. A conductor announced boarding would begin in 5 minutes. Emily looked toward the train, then back at me. I still don't know if I'm doing the right thing. I took both of her hands. I think you are. She frowned. You do. You worked too hard for this opportunity. I'm not going to ask you to give it up because I finally found my courage. A tear rolled down her cheek. You really changed. I smiled. I'm trying to. She laughed softly. Good. Because I'm not falling in love with the old Connor again. I'm falling in love with the man who came back. The announcement sounded again. Final boarding. Emily stepped closer and wrapped her arms around me. Every day. Even on the difficult ones. Her eyes filled with tears again. Then she kissed me. Slowly. Calmly. Like someone who wasn't saying goodbye, but see you soon. When the train doors opened, she picked up her suitcase, walked backward for 3 steps, still looking at me. Connor, yeah, you still have my note? I reached into my jacket pocket, held it up. I'm keeping it. She smiled. Good. So you never forget what almost happened. She stepped onto the train. A moment later, she appeared at the window. The train began to move. She pressed her hand against the glass. I did the same from the platform. Neither of us waved. We simply smiled, because for the first time in almost a year, neither of us was wondering if the other one would come back. We already knew. 1 year later, a small wooden sign hung above the entrance to a flower shop in Portland. Flower and Vine. Underneath it, in much smaller letters, was another sign. Photography by Connor Hayes. Every Saturday morning, I placed a bucket of fresh flowers outside the door. Emily still refused to let anyone pay for them. One spring morning, I found a folded note beside the coffee maker. Connor, don't forget, I'm still choosing you today. Emily. I smiled, folded the note carefully, and slipped it into my wallet beside the first one. Some reminders are worth keeping forever. What would you have done if you came home early, only to discover the person you loved had already decided to let you go? Would you have chased them, or let them leave? Tell me your answer in the comments.